Hi, the new Christopher Nolan movie Tenet is a pre-Casino Royale James Bond movie in a confusing sci-fi context, filled with amazing spectacles. So let me explain what I mean by that. I want to look at this movie from kind of three perspectives. One is the style, and two is the story, and three kind of the characters. So when you look at the movie from kind of the context of style, it's a very James Bondian movie. It's kind of the American version of James Bond. It's got the typical Bond tropes: high-speed car chases, beautiful women, tall buildings, and kind of suave people. And the main protagonist is again a very James Bondian character, charismatic, suave, powerful. What makes the difference is, in the pre-Casino Royale James Bond movies, James Bond is just a guy who you like because he's stylish, he's suave, he's powerful, right? But in Casino Royale, James Bond character goes through a shift. The Daniel Steele Casino Royale James Bond is not somebody that you like just because he's stylish. You like him because you invest in what he cares about. The shift is, the pre-Casino Royale James Bond guys would sleep with some woman, but they would never fall in love with a woman, right? They're always very detached. Whereas with Casino Royale going forward, James Bond always falls in love with the woman that he sleeps with, and ultimately the woman gets killed. That impinges on the way he lives the rest of his life. He's a changed man because he's lost something. And when you see that on the screen, as an audience, you feel empathy with that change. You invest in that character when you see somebody going through a loss that is a real loss, and that changes that person because they went through the loss, and you're with that character. You want to see that character win. That's what kind of endears the audience towards the character and the story, right? In the pre-Casino Royale James Bond, that doesn't happen. You like him because he looks great. So in the Tenet movie, which is kind of the American version of James Bond, it's the same thing. You're not like invested in the character so much. You just like him because he looks great. You like him because it's got great spectacles. And I think that's a little bit of the problem. As I was sitting and watching the movie, I was thinking, man, I just don't feel my heart being in this movie. So that's kind of one of the sense that I got in the movie. And I think a part of the problem is kind of that sense of it lacks a sense of personal investment. At the same time, the movie is an absolute spectacle. I had never seen a movie. I mean, for the past 6 months we've been in quarantine, so I've not gone to a movie theater to see a movie. So the very first scene that came on, I was just like blown away. I saw it in an IMAX theater. And again, Chris Nolan does a phenomenal job with IMAX in a way that no other director ever has. The sound and the visual effects, I was viscerally feeling something, and I was like, oh wow, this is what it feels like to be in a movie theater. The spectacle is stunning. There are very few movies in which the stunning spectacle is something that you actually feel in a visceral way, and this is one of those few. So I would recommend that you go and see it in an IMAX theater. So that's kind of the sense of the style. And in sense of the story and the story world building, the movie kind of has a few problems there too, because as usual, Chris Nolan tries to fudge with time. He did that really well with Memento, he did that really well with Inception. But with this, I don't know that he was able to pull it through. Because he does a form of time travel, and then there's also a form of time reversal, which is even more complicated. And I don't think the movie does a good job of really explaining it in a way that made sense. And at different points where the plot had to change, it looked to me that they changed the rules of the world, which made it look like there was kind of like a Deus Ex Machina moment in the middle of the story, which usually is very frustrating. If you're somebody that is really so keyed into the story and you see a Deus Ex Machina moment, you're like, oh my goodness, this is so frustrating. Because with complex story worlds and sci-fi kind of type movies, you want the story world to be explained first, and you suspend disbelief, and you want to let the story go on in a way that is consistent with the initial suspension of disbelief. if something happens in the middle that changes the story world in the middle, or the rules of the world in the middle, it gets a bit kind of irritating. I found myself at that spot in a couple of places. It's possible I missed some nuance there, and it could be there. Maybe I should go back and see it the second time to see if it's there, because Chris Nolan is a wonderful storyteller. He doesn't make silly mistakes of that sort. But anyways, that's kind of my sense. The story world is way too complicated, and at times there's way too much exposition of the story by the characters. That again gets a little bit frustrating, because you want to see and infer as against being kind of told, and even what they say doesn't fully make sense, which makes it even more enervating. So that's kind of the story world aspect of it, and I think that was the weakest part of the whole movie. The construction of the story world and how the story world made sense. And then you have kind of the characters, and the protagonist, who's kind of the American James Bond, is just a CIA agent. You don't even know the name of the person. That's kind of how the story goes. And then you have kind of a Bond-like villain. With any typical Bond villain, he's a little bit of he's a megalomaniac. But one difference is, most Bond villains just want to be the most powerful guy in the world. Right, that's what they're looking for. With this villain in Tenet, he is the most powerful guy in the world, but he doesn't care about that. He just wants to destroy the whole world, and that's a very interesting character. Why would a character want to just kind of destroy the whole world? As against just be happy being the most powerful person in the world. And when I was thinking about his character, I was reminded of John Milton's Paradise Lost. And the Lucifer character, or the Satan character in that epic poem, because in that epic poem, Lucifer, or Satan, has the number 2 place in the hierarchy of cosmos, right below God. He could have been happy in that space, but no, he cannot be. He wants the number 1 place in the world, and if he's not going to get that, then he's going to go and destroy the whole thing and kind of do his own thing on the side, right? So and the character in this movie reminded me of kind of that Luciferian impulse of, if I don't get what I want, I'm just going to destroy everything. And this is where I think there's some interesting theological kind of observations. And in this channel, I like to talk about movies, books, and spirituality and theology. So I want to kind of make a couple of theological observations here. Towards the end of the movie, and again, I'm not going to have any spoilers here, there is a discussion between the protagonist and the villain, where they both talk about what their actual faith is. In typical Christopher Nolan fashion, the audio of the voice is much lower, and the background noises are really high, so you can't fully hear what they're trying to say. But the kind of the gist of the conversation is basically that both the villain and the protagonist are coming from kind of a different perspective on faith, where the villain says, if I cannot be God, then I'm just going to play like a character like the devil and be kind of God in my own right, and if I can't create the whole world, I'll just destroy the whole world, right? And the hero is someone that is trying to use his power to save people. And what we see here is the question of, how do we face disappointments in life? Sometimes in life, we go through disappointments, and in the villain's character, he does have a disappointment in his life. His wife doesn't quite love him, and you'd wonder why, and he thinks he's going to die soon. But the problem is, even though he has all this power, he does not have the ability to deal with his disappointments in a healthy way. So he just lashes out and says, okay, I'm going to go destroy the whole world, which is such a egregious position to hold on to. Which is why this character reminded me of Lucifer figure in John Milton's poem Paradise Lost. This actually reminded me of Erich Fromm, who is a psychiatrist who escaped the Nazis during World War II and came back into States. He said, the way we deal with disappointments basically tells us how healthy or how unhealthy we are. He says, when people deal with disappointments, they either go into the side of addictions, or they go into the side of anger towards people around them. And in this case, the villain goes into the side of anger towards people around him, which again reminds me of of Lucifer in Paradise Lost, because Lucifer in Paradise Lost says he has immortal hate. He's going to be defined by his immortal hate of God and the world. So that's kind of where the villain's inability to deal with his own disappointments leads him. So from kind of a theological perspective, what we see here is that our ultimate happiness is not in getting just what we want. Our ultimate happiness comes from living a life that is meaningful. Our ultimate happiness comes from a sense of seeing ourselves as the beloved of God and loving our neighbors around us. When we love our neighbors around us, we have to use our power and use it to help the people around us, the way the protagonist in Tenet does. And in doing that, we find a much deeper form of happiness than the superficial happiness that this villain in this movie is seeking. And to me, it often reminds me of kind of the paradoxical nature of happiness and what Jesus meant when he said in Luke 9, he who wants his life, let him give up his life. So it's a sense of it's a sense of seeing life not just as, okay, I want to get all these things that I want. It's a way of seeing life of saying, okay, God has blessed me with so many different things and his love. So my happiness is in being a channel of God's love to people around us, and seeing us as people that are willing to serve the people around us. David Brooks is a commentator that wrote this book called The Second Mountain, and he kind of attests to this. He says some of the happiest people that he's met are people that pour themselves out in serving and helping the people around them, which is a bit of a paradoxical idea of the same kind that Jesus talks about, of if you want to gain your life, then give up your life. But in doing that, in using our power to help people around us, we find a much deeper form of satisfaction and happiness than we could ever find in just trying to have the superficial attitude of my happiness is based on me getting what I think I want. Because if we are in the superficial attitude of happiness, then we tend to respond to disappointments the way this Bond villain does. I mean, this villain in Tenet does, which is, if I can't get what I want, then I'm going to destroy everything else. So anyways, so those are some theological reflections on the characters in this movie. So again, in terms of style, this movie is great. It's a pre-Casino Royale Bond movie. In terms of the story, it's a bit of a confusing sci-fi story, and in terms of the characters, it ultimately affirms a sense of a protagonist that is willing to use his power to help the people around him, much in a Christ-like way in that sense. Anyways, if you like this video, please feel free to like and subscribe to my channel. I like to talk about movies and theology and books. And if there's any movie you want me to talk about, please let me know in the comments. Until I see you in another video, bye for now.